Who's that coming down the track?
Who's that coming down the track?
It's a mean machine in red and black.
Mean machine in red and black.
Ain't nothing finer in the land.
Ain't nothing finer in the land.
Them drunk obnoxious Georgia fans.
Them drunk obnoxious Georgia fans.
Go, go!
What's up, y'all? This is John, Mike, and Kaleb back for another episode of the Nothing Finer podcast. Tonight, we are joined once again by Tim Prister to talk about the Notre Dame Fighting Irish before the Sugar Bowl on Wednesday night. But before we get into that, Tim, how you been?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here in New Orleans. The weather is perfect, and really looking forward to Wednesday night. It's a big opportunity for Notre Dame that's going to be very difficult to achieve.
What is the weather feeling like right now? Because I still haven't packed, and I'm leaving tomorrow, so I need to.
Today was perfect. It's like low 70s. I don't know what the forecast is because the game's inside, so I haven't looked in it for the next couple of days. But it's been great. I mean, I guess I just got here yesterday, but no, it was sunny today and perfect, and I haven't heard anything otherwise.
Awesome.
Nice.
Let's go ahead and jump right into it because we've got a lot of questions, and I know you've got some more stuff to do tonight, and you've made some time for us. We'll go ahead and get right into the game. And first question, so I may be way off base with this, but it seems like a decent portion of the fan base is hesitant to trust Marcus Freeman. I just Notre Dame fans I'm friends with have told me that they're still not convinced that he's the best option. Is that a common sentiment, or am I just friends with crazy people?
Well, they haven't won a major bowl since 1993, so I don't think it's a Marcus Freeman thing per se. He's won 31 games in 3 years as a first-time coach at the University of Notre Dame. That just doesn't happen. I think he's done a really, really good job this year. He's gotten better. He's gotten better with each year. And the Northern Illinois game was still a reflection of his first couple of years in Notre Dame, but he has had them dialed in. And I recognize that they're not playing Texas twice or Alabama or Tennessee or Mississippi or Clemson. So it's been easier for them to have an 11-game winning streak, but they're playing really, really well. They've dominated virtually everybody that they've played. This is a different animal in Georgia, and I don't think I think you guys would agree. Georgia won the national title in 21 and 22, and should have made the playoffs last year. So, I don't think this is quite as dominant of a Georgia team as what we've seen, but it's still a very, very good one. And the thing that, from a Notre Dame perspective, the concerning thing is the size of both lines. I was at the two press conferences today, and it's a very big Georgia team, and Notre Dame just lost Riley Mills. So look, Marcus Freeman is doing a really, really nice job. Is he going to win national titles? I'll let you know about midnight on Wednesday, because if he wins that game, it puts Notre Dame in a different stratosphere. But yeah, they're still concerned. But who are they going to hire that would be more promising than a guy that's won 31 games at the age of 38 in 3 years? I think he's done a pretty nice job. They've been upset a couple times, but they're also 5-0 against ranked teams. And again, this year, it's not the battery of teams that Georgia has faced.
It's still an impressive class, though, for sure. Kirby had his own hiccups first couple of years of him being a head coach as well.
Yeah, he lost 5 games first year. Is that right? Was I told
6.
that correctly? Yeah, 6. Wow. Yeah, but he's got it going on now, doesn't he?
For all we know, Thursday morning, Ryan Day may be available. And that's just more shade at Ohio State because nobody likes them.
Well, I get that. I don't know that he's going to lose his job if he loses the number 1 team in the country. I actually, that's one of my, I like Ohio State in that game. I think, they play brilliantly against Tennessee. So I'm not sure. I don't know if Ryan Day is going to be available, but I think Notre Dame, as we sit here right now, is very, very comfortable. Marcus Freeman just got an extension. at the very least, you better really, really compete well against Georgia because Notre Dame's been through too many one-sided big bowls, and that would not sit well.
Just a quick fact check. Kirby Smart did go 8-5 his first year.
8-5.
We did not lose 6 games.
Oh, that's correct.
They beat Auburn. I forget about that game.
Yeah, they did. It was a big one.
That was the wild
easily
game.
forgettable game. It was
Also beat TCU that year by 1 score, which imagine only beating TCU by 1 score, but
it's
that's
tough
neither here nor
tough to
there.
remember. So we've seen Notre Dame fans travel well in the past, but how confident are with how confident Irish fans are online and the few that we've met in person are? Do you think they'll show up, or have they already paid for trips to the Orange Bowl?
Yeah. I don't know that. I don't know they're confident enough yet, Marcus Freeman, to already pay for their Miami trips. Maybe some of the richer ones. There's quite a few of those from Notre Dame, but I think they'll show. Yeah, Notre Dame travels well. I've next year, God willing, I will have covered my 500th Notre Dame game. So I've seen Notre Dame fans on the road, and they travel really well, especially when they like the team that they see and when they like the head coach. And there's a lot to like about Marcus Freeman. He gets Notre Dame, which is not easy to do. Not everybody is a good fit for Notre Dame because they don't understand the culture. There's a religious factor in there, a Catholicism factor in there, and not every coach is a good fit for Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman is. In fact, he actually converted to Catholicism since he became head coach.
Okay.
So, for whatever that's worth, the bottom line, we're talking football here, and he's got to win. He's got to win football games, but they'll travel. They're very excited about this team and this opportunity. But I think when we get to the stage where they have to play somebody of the level of Georgia, I think that confidence slips a little bit until they see them come up with a big win. Like I said, they haven't won what you would consider a major bowl since 1993, which is pretty hard to believe that it's been that long. They've had a lot of successes during that time. Brian Kelly went undefeated in 3 regular seasons, but the way he left, Notre Dame fans will never forgive him for that. So it doesn't matter how many undefeated regular seasons he had.
Y'all won the breakup there.
Yeah, he had trouble winning the big games, and this is a true measuring stick for Notre Dame football Wednesday night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the calling card this year for Notre Dame has been the O-line. They have only allowed 1.3 sacks per game, and they've made way for the 11th best rushing offense in the country. Obviously, that's been a big part of what Notre Dame has done offensively this year. So with how Georgia's played against teams like Texas with good offensive lines, what do you expect to see from that battle in the trenches?
Well, Georgia kicked Texas's butt twice against the run. I mean, to a level that I don't think even you guys expected to see that.
No.
It's concerning. And frankly, of the 2 matchups, Notre Dame's offensive line against Georgia's defensive line and vice versa, the one that I think is the most concerning is Georgia's D line against Notre Dame's offensive line, because Jeremiah Love had a 98-yard run, but Indiana shouldn't locked him down. I do think you'll see Riley Leonard run more than he did against Indiana. In fact, I highly suspect that they held back on a lot of his runs. Number one, just to keep the element of surprise in play. And number 2, to keep him healthy going into Georgia, because I know I talked to one of Notre Dame's coaches and I asked him about Haynes King. Now, when Notre Dame played Georgia Tech, Haynes King did not play in that game. Haynes King is brilliant, and Riley Leonard is similar to him. I would say Haynes King is a better passer, but they're the combination run pass. And anyway, this coach said he was astonished at how Georgia's defense just beat the daylights out of Haynes King. And Haynes King threw for 303 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then he rushed for 110 and ran for 3, or some combination of a whole bunch of touchdowns. I know there were all those overtimes and stuff, but concerning, because Notre Dame's offensive line has been a strength, and this was a rebuild right from the beginning of the season, and it came together. Credit to Joe Rudolph, Notre Dame's offensive line coach, who was at Virginia Tech, once at Wisconsin. He's done a really, really good job. But when I saw the size of the Georgia defensive line come into the press conference, and I've watched a ton of film of them, and I know that they rotate. Oh, they got 5 guys. Is Christian back? Miller, is it Christian Miller?
I haven't heard anything recently on Christian Miller.
I was told by Jordan Hill from the Georgia site for 24/7 Sports that they thought he might be back. And that's just another guy added to the mix. So it's concerning, especially, Indiana attacks with their linebackers and Georgia really attacks with their linebackers. So, Jeremiah Love is brilliant. He's fantastic. He's a great running back. If he can get through that first wave, he's gone. But the problem outside of that 98-yarder against Indiana was he couldn't get through any more of the first waves of Indiana. And Georgia's way more talented up front in the front 7 than they are.
So Georgia's pass rush really gets going against better competition. They improve up to 3rd in the country in sacks per game against teams with a winning record. Does that concern you going into this game?
Yeah, I mean, it's the blitzing linebackers. You know what those linebackers are like. They're killers. They're really, really good. Now Notre Dame has protected Riley Leonard pretty darn well. And the danger for Georgia is when Riley Leonard escapes, he's almost always faster than the linebackers on the second level. They're trying to catch him. Georgia, again, could be the exception to that rule. But he's he always makes fun of himself and says he's, kind of clunky and not a good athlete. That's just not true. He's 4', 6'5", 220 pounds. And can really run. Long strider, really an adept runner. So when it comes to the pass rush, there's no doubt that Georgia's bringing it from that second level, but it's a little bit difficult sometimes corralling Riley Leonard. He's really good at avoiding the pass rush.
Mike, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. I had a baby screaming at the door a few minutes ago. Sorry. Jeremiah Love is a top-tier running back in the country, and Riley Leonard can be deadly on some runs. And as Georgia fans, we know how much Kirby Smart defenses tend to struggle with mobile quarterbacks. Look at Jalen Milroe and so on. Kind of Haynes King especially.
Yeah,
2 years in a row, really. But how well do you expect the ground game to play out for Notre Dame in this game?
Well, it's going to have to play out better than it did in all the other runs, but that 98-yarder last week by Love. I think it's problematic, and that's why I say I think the greater concern, even though Notre Dame, here's the other thing, the other side of the ball, Notre Dame lost Riley Mills. I mean, he was their best interior defensive lineman, and they don't have the depth that Georgia can count on. But it's concerning, which means that Riley Leonard has to be effective. And Leonard has never been asked to win games with the passing game per se. They've been able to lean on that run game. I know a lot of people have said, well, if Notre Dame has to come back from a deficit, they're not sure whether Riley Leonard can pass them to victory. The reason we don't know is because they've never had a large deficit. They lost to Northern Illinois, but it was by 2 points. He made a bad mistake at the end of the game when they were up by a point and really had a chance to put the game away when he threw a deep ball interception on 3rd and 1. If he throws it away or underthrows it or does something else, Marcus Freeman's very aggressive. They probably would have gone for it on 4th and 1 and converted it. And then would Notre Dame be, undefeated now, or without that loss to Northern Illinois, would that have been motivation, or would that have taken away some of the motivation that Notre Dame had, because it was survive every week after that? So we'll never know that. But Riley Leonard has to be good, and Notre Dame. Georgia doesn't have. Maybe you guys can weigh in on this. Georgia doesn't have a great group of receivers, but they're still better than Notre Dame's as a whole.
Just don't like to catch the ball, which is the problem.
Yeah, and Notre Dame's had drop issues too. Bo Collins has had drops. Jordan Faison, who had a big game against Indiana, has had drops, but they can't afford that. They've got to be impeccable in the passing game. And Riley Leonard, I like preseason and then early in the season, we really doubted that he could be accurate. He's been almost 70% accurate since then. But again, I mean, I keep coming back to the fact that you're playing Georgia. You're not playing Virginia. You're not playing Stanford or Florida State. You catch, excuse me, you catch Florida State when they're awful. So it'll be more difficult. But I'm interested to see what he can do because he's gained a lot of confidence, and he's had a little bit of magic to his game. There's no doubt about that. The last 10, 11 games.
So going off of talking about Riley Leonard, Notre Dame is just outside the top 100 in passing offense. So just a couple of questions related to the passing game. You brought up the receivers. I'll move over this one because you have talked about the receivers being a concern already for Notre Dame. But what do you expect, I guess, out of the passing game coming up with them primarily being a running team?
Yeah, I think you have to take advantage of Georgia's aggression on the second level and fit some passes over the linebackers in front of the DBs. Mitchell Evans, their tight end, who really came on strong last year and then suffered a torn ACL. I still don't think that we've seen the Mitchell Evans that we saw last year. He's a bigger guy, 260, 265, and so he played from the outset of the season, but he just hasn't quite had that consistent burst. But I think he's a guy that has to have a big game. Bo Collins has to catch the football. Jordan Faison, who had 7 catches for 89 yards, which, believe it or not, was the most yards in a game this year by a Notre Dame receiver. Wow. He did that against Indiana. Yeah, I mean, it's not much, because that's how much they rely on the run game. So he has to have another good game. Jaden Greathouse is a guy that just hasn't taken off for them. But he is another guy that can find some seams behind the second level of the defense. It's not a great receiving core. Now they have a verbal commitment from, speaking of Virginia, they have a verbal commitment from Malachi Fields, who is an excellent receiver coming out of Virginia. So I would expect a little bit of an upgrade next year. And Notre Dame's receiving core really is, as a whole, is a little bit better than it was last year. But it wasn't good at all last year. So they've small steps. Georgia only has 8 picks, right, for the season. I think it's 8 interceptions, and they faced a lot of passes. So that
I think like 4 of those were against Texas, right?
Texas, something like that.
Yeah. So
they've had almost as many dropped interceptions as the offense has dropped.
Is that right?
Is that right?
True.
Nobody has hands.
Wow.
I don't think these guys could catch a cold on Georgia's team.
See, and Notre Dame has 19 interceptions.
Oh, wow.
So and that's an area veering off a little bit here. That's an area, Notre Dame is in the top 5 in the country in turnover margin, and they've relied on that. And Georgia has not. They're only a +1. They have not been able to force a lot of turnovers, which I'm a little bit surprised by. But again, I think it's just the level of play. Georgia's defense has been so incredibly dominant the last few years that they're just not quite up to that level this year. But big game, man, big game. Yeah, I'm sure Georgia's secondary will respond to the challenge.
So moving over to the defensive side of the ball, and honestly, I think for us, it was a lot more difficult to come up with questions because no one really knows exactly how much the scheme is going to change with an actual dual threat quarterback of Gunnar Stockton playing. But starting off with Notre Dame's ability to stop the run, coming in at 40th in the country, allowing 3.66 yards per carry. And Georgia struggled to run the ball at times this year. But does Gunnar Stockton's legs concern you with Notre Dame stopping the run?
Yeah, all things being equal, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I've heard a lot of sentiment from the Georgia section of this conversation that Well, Carson Beck's throwing a lot of interceptions. They're probably better off with Gunnar Stockton. And I get it because he is a dual threat, and Georgia probably does need that little bonus in the running game from their quarterback. But look, I've been around way too long to say that they're better off. I mean, Carson Beck he's thrown almost 1,000 passes in college. He's still a very, very good quarterback. His confidence may have, been a little bit shaken. I don't think there's any doubt about that. 11 interceptions in a 5-game span, I think it was.
Yep.
But I still think that Georgia, all things being equal, would be better off with Carson Beck. So here's the challenge for the Bulldogs, and that is, Gunnar Stockton's thrown 51 passes in his career. He's going to look into L. Golden's defense. And Golden does this to everybody. He's going to look into that defense and say, what the hell are they doing? And not be able to figure it out at times. He's an excellent defensive coordinator. Notre Dame holds to hold on to him, but he's probably going to get offers from the NFL as a coordinator, of course. So, I mean, Gunnar Stockton, there's no doubt about it. He's gonna, when he throws, he's going to roll out a lot of times. I think that Kirby Smart's going to make sure that happens. He's going to be more difficult to catch, and Georgia needs that. I've been surprised at all the film that I've watched. I've been surprised that their run game isn't better, because I think Georgia's offensive line is a really, really good pass blocking line. And I realize that it's two different arts, run blocking and pass blocking, but I'm just surprised that they haven't been better. Now they've thrown so much. 400.
I think it's been an injury issue. You lost
with the offensive line. Yeah, no, I know that you've been banged up.
With the running backs. You lost 2 of your top 3 guys pre-season. One of them has played a total of 10 snaps this season. So you've had Trevor Etienne, a true freshman, and a walk-on, and that's your top 3 running backs for Georgia. And I think that is a massive reason.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah, I really like Nate Frazier. He's a little bit. He's got a little bit more dash to his game. No doubt. I mean, Etienne didn't play the last three regular season games, but we know what they're capable of. And frankly, especially with Notre Dame without Riley Mills, is as great of a coordinator as Al Golden is. They've been a little inconsistent against the run. So, when you ask me concerned about Gunnar Stockton, I think if he runs, then that opens things up for Etienne and Frazier. So it's a great Notre Dame defense, but there are just times where they give up the run, and it's Al Golden's philosophy that I am not going to get beat deep. You may bite off chunks of 10, 12, 15 yards, but I am not going to let you beat me deep. Most teams can't do that. Arian Smith probably can get behind
if he can catch it.
Right.
If he can catch it. But I would put Notre Dame's secondary, and this is without Benjamin Morrison. It's amazing. I would put Notre Dame's secondary up against really anybody in the country. It is exceptional, and that's Mike Mickens, the defensive backs coach, who is going to be a coordinator really, really soon. And if Al Golden goes to the NFL, it'll be in South Bend that he might be a coordinator.
So Notre Dame has gotten to the quarterback really well this season with 2.54 sacks per game. So how much of an emphasis do you expect to see them with the pass rush on Gunnar?
Yeah, they've lost. They really lost their 2 best pass rushers in Jordan Botelho and Boubacar Traore, and so much like Georgia, Coach Schumann, is it Glenn Schumann? Much like him, he loves Golden loves to bring linebackers. So that's a lot of times that's how they have to get their pass rush. Or Riley Mills, the defensive tackle, leads the team, or I should say led the team, in sacks with 7.5. So that's a huge loss there. They're not going to be able to replicate that with Gabe Rubio, although I think he can hold the point of attack pretty well. But they're going to have to bring guys from the second level. And Golden's is exceptional at creating a chemistry and a timing and he knows when to bring them and where to bring them from. So they'll have to do it from the linebacker core. And unfortunately for Notre Dame, if they had Traore and Botello, they'd be able to get a little bit more from the base defense, the down linemen.
I was going to ask you about your expectations for the passing defense, but you have essentially covered the secondary already.
Yeah, I kind of prattle on, don't I?
Well, no, that's great. I like that it's natural. So I guess we'll just go right into what are you most concerned about going into this game?
The Georgia-ness that might come peeking out. Like the individual matchup, it's Notre Dame's offensive line against their defensive line, and it's just the momentum, the size. Kirby Smart is so accustomed to playing in big games, and it's just Notre Dame. I mean, it's not Alabama. It's not, some of the behemoths that he's had to beat in the postseason all the time. And when I say just Notre Dame, this is a very good Notre Dame team. Don't get me wrong. They're getting better. It's a program that's getting better. But the injuries, what concerns Notre Dame people the most is just, one of the things that we've been talking about on our podcast is, is this a bridge too far? When they, as the saying goes, when they lost Riley Mills, it's like, okay, now it's Riley Mills, and it was Botello and Traore and Ashton Craig, the center, and Benjamin Morrison. And it just, and now Mills, it's added up. And Notre Dame, I mean, the reason they're here is because they have really, really good depth, but everybody has a breaking point. And so that's what concerns me. The Georgia-ness that could start coming out of the Bulldogs that is just so accustomed to playing and winning big games. I think Notre Dame's going to hang in there, but Notre Dame has had many, many years of hanging in there or getting blown out in big games, and at this stage, neither one of those is acceptable. They need to win this game to take this program to another level.
All right. Positive note before we get into picking some games. What are you most confident in going into this game?
I'm the most confident in Marcus Freeman's ability to get his team to play at a high level. So for whatever Notre Dame fans may have some questions about Marcus Freeman, I think he's done a brilliant job this year. And then, of course, the defense. I mean, Georgia may not score. I mean, if Notre Dame holds Georgia to 20 points, especially with a young quarterback, I mean, maybe it's 17. I don't know. I don't want to speak it out of truth here, so to speak. But Notre Dame's defense is great. And they could make a young quarterback mistake prone. And then we're looking at, there's a reason why the point spread is what, 44? I think both defensive coordinators have an advantage over both offensive coordinators. So, I'm confident that Notre Dame defense can keep the offense or the entire team in the game.
All right, so we're gonna pick the 4 playoff games this weekend. We're gonna give you the spread. We're gonna give you the over/under, but we're just asking for a straight up pick. First one, Penn State versus Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. Penn State 11-point favorite, over/under 53.5.
I'm the king of taking the favorite and saying the other team's going to cover. That's what I'm going to say here. I think Boise will compete. I don't know how much Penn State can score, although I love their running backs. I love Singleton. I want him to come to Notre Dame real badly, and he didn't. So I'll take Penn State, and I'll say Boise will. You know what? I'm going to change that. If you're going to hold me to this, I'm going to say Penn State will win and cover.
Okay.
In the Peach Bowl, we have Texas versus Arizona State. Texas 13-point favorite, over/under 51.5.
Great admiration for Arizona State. Love their running back Scattaboo. He says nobody can stop him, and he's right. He's really, really difficult to tackle. This one Texas is the better football team. I don't know how Arizona State is They haven't been here, man. They haven't been here. They don't know what this is like. I'll take Texas winning and covering.
In the Rose Bowl, Ohio State and Oregon in a traditional Rose Bowl matchup. Ohio State 2.5-point favorite, over under 55.5.
I love Ohio State. I mean, I don't love Ohio State. I love Ohio State in this game. I have no problem with Ohio State. But I think the true Ohio State is starting to come out. As we say in the Midwest, it's the best team of money could buy. They spent $20 million on their transfers. And look, anybody can do it. If you want to do it, you can do it. And they did it. And they shouldn't have lost to Michigan, but that's what happens in rivalry games, because you saw what happened against Georgia Tech.
Yep.
You kind of throw out the records. But I think Ohio State is about to peak, and you're asking Oregon to beat Ohio State for a second time. Oregon's been off. Sometimes that layoff is a little bit too much, maybe. Although I guess Ohio State's had well, no, they played Tennessee. So no, I love Ohio State. I think they're going to win and cover.
Last game, the game both you and I are going to be at, Notre Dame versus Georgia, Sugar Bowl in New Orleans. Georgia's dropped to a 1-point favorite, over under 43.5.
I'm a little bit amazed that it's dropped to 1, especially with Notre Dame's injuries. And I hope I'm wrong, but I think Georgia wins. I'm not going to say my score because then I'm going to give that away. But Georgia wins in a low-scoring game.
Well, Tim, we appreciate you coming on and talking to us, and we made it just right around your time you needed to get out of here. But we got to close up on some things. We appreciate you coming and talking to us, and maybe I'll see you in New Orleans.
Great. I will be here, and thanks for reaching out, guys. Have a great night. Thank you.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we're going to thank Tim once again for coming on and talking to us. Normally in these big games, I leave the interview feeling much worse about Georgia's chances. And this one, I think I actually feel better.
Yeah.
Well, I felt great going into it, but
yeah, I shrugged the Kool-Aid, but
yeah, that reaffirmed my my Kool-Aid drinking there.
Yeah, and so I think we're going to just jump right into our picks. And, no one knows for sure what Gunnar Stockton is going to be. No one knows how he's going to play. But I do know that this team has visibly and publicly rallied behind him and said things publicly that none of them ever said about Carson Beck.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They said he's a leader. They said he commands the huddle. They said he's got that dog in him.
He stays late.
I was about to say, they said he's barely leaving the facility.
Yeah, burning the midnight oil.
Yeah, multiple offensive linemen have talked about how they're going in at almost midnight because they forgot something, and he's still there watching film.
Mm-hmm.
He is not just taking this opportunity to heart, but he is taking this opportunity to be everything he has worked for in his entire life, and he is going to make sure that he is prepared for it. And, I think that's the mental part of being ready for this game. But I think he's physically ready to win this game because he can get out of a jam in the pocket. He can do that. We've seen that he throws extremely catchable passes. Not a single drop pass in the second half of that SEC title game after Georgia led the country in drop passes through 12 games. But here's the thing about Notre Dame. Their helmets are flashier than anyone on their team. Their quarterback is a glorified mid running back. Their defense, not only do they struggle against good competition, they got torched by a 7-6 USC team. The scariest thing about Notre Dame is the priest on campus.
Guys,
There it is.
The other two people on this podcast are Catholic too, guys. It's fine. If you're listening, it's fine.
The behavior of some priests is not fine, but the joke is.
Yeah, the joke is fine. The joke is fine.
Honestly, everything I thought about Notre Dame, I think even more now. Am I concerned about Gunnar Stockton throwing into a very good secondary? Yes. In the two games they struggled against, or in the two games they played against top 20 passing offenses, they allowed 312 yards a game. So, with good receivers and a good quarterback and an offensive line that can protect, we've seen Notre Dame not just give up yards, but give up a lot of yards.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Detroit has in their first drive.
And they just scored.
I know. It was my first opportunity to fit it in. I had to.
This game does not matter in grand scheme of things. It's Sunday night is what matters, and I'm scared to death of that. But I have Jamison Williams on my fantasy team, and I needed that.
But yeah, like Notre Dame, full of injuries. Their offensive line, they're missing two guys. We just heard Tim talk about how their receivers are worse than Georgia's. And the only reason they don't have more drop passes is because they haven't had near as many pass attempts. And if you see Mike's head in his hands, that was hilarious.
Yeah.
I also have Jake Bates on my fantasy team. He got extra point.
Oh, Jake's baiting.
He's not a masturbate right now.
Notre Dame, where was that? Oh, injuries. The best defensive lineman, team leader in sacks, he's out. Their center, he's out. One of their tackles is out. So you're telling me Georgia has to stop a running attack behind an offensive lineman missing two guys. And they have to stop wide receivers that should have dropped more passes than Georgia's wide receivers. They just don't throw near as much.
Guys, they're being compared to Georgia's wide receivers, guys.
Right. And the defense has to stop Jeremiah Love, who we heard Tim say it, outside of a 98-yard touchdown run, couldn't do anything against Indiana, and Riley Leonard.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest, I think this game still hits the under, but is 23 to 10?
What, 10? I was about to say 10.
Out of the question? Like, is that out of the... Who would feel good about that game? Georgia fans for winning.
Yeah.
But that feels gross. But it feels like the kind of game we're going to get.
Look, it's for bringing in a backup quarterback running the offense himself for the first time. That's fine. Sure.
Yeah, I agree. I personally, because I'm going to this game, I would prefer a 42 to 10 kind of game.
Yeah, 65 to 7 sort of.
Yeah. No, that's a little much.
That's too much
for Notre Dame. But like, I want a game where I'm not gonna feel bad for going to get some beer during the third quarter if I miss some play. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of the game I'm looking for.
All right. Go ahead.
Nope. Go ahead. I thought you were pausing for a second. I was just gonna keep rambling.
Oh, you go for it. You get through it. I think you still got notes left.
Oh, shit. Do I?
I don't know.
But no, I do think this is a two-possession game. I think this game puts the winners on notice that Georgia isn't just as good with Gunnar Stockton, but I think Georgia's offense is more explosive and dynamic and dangerous with Gunnar Stockton. I think it's a two-possession game. Probably the under hits, and I feel bad about saying that out loud because life's too short to take the under. But I don't bet on Georgia football, so I don't feel bad.
Fair enough. All right, so here's my thing about this game, right? I've been holding my tongue for the last little bit since we knew this was the game, mostly because I'm Catholic and I don't want to piss off touchdown Jesus. But
there's also a touchdown Jesus in New Orleans, which is...
Is there really?
Yes. Theirs is like a small statue with a spotlight, so on the back of the church, it looks like Jesus doing this.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Well, it didn't help them in 1981, even when Herschel Walker dislocated his shoulder on the second play of the game. But I digress. I have to agree that this game feels like one that Georgia wins convincingly to me. I'm not saying blowout, but convincingly. And I haven't really said that about any game this year except Clemson, which we know how that one went. Part of my reason for saying that is that it's just a gut feeling that I get. But I genuinely don't think Notre Dame's going to be able to score that much. And people keep talking about how Georgia's defense has had a hard time stopping the run game this season. I think they're around 77th in the country in rush defense this year. But if you average our 6 biggest games of the season, this is a big game, by the way. Don't know if you're aware of that.
Arguably the biggest game.
Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't end up as our biggest game, but right now. So if you average our 6 biggest games this season, including 2 losses, by the way, we would have the number 5 rush defense in the nation. Just taking those 6 games. So, in other words, this defense may have had some moments against like Georgia Tech and UMass and Kentucky that might lead someone to believe that there's some weaknesses in it. But in the biggest games of the year, they are a top 5 rush defense. And not like Indiana is a top 5 rush defense because they hadn't played anybody. And not like Army is a top 15 rush defense because they play in the American Athletic Conference.
Against a few triple option teams. Let's not disrespect the Black
Let's be
Knights
real.
here.
Let's be real. Okay. Yeah, fair enough. But in the biggest games that Georgia plays, especially Georgia's top 5 rush defense. And the running game, if the running game for Notre Dame doesn't work, which it won't, I don't see a world in which Riley Leonard is able to use his arm to win this game. But I'm going to move back onto the elephant in the room, and I'm not talking about Alabama because they're not in the playoff. The reason that national media types think Georgia's going to lose this game is because they're idiots, but also because they are making the assumption that without Carson Beck in this game, Georgia's just going to sit back and rely on the running game to win. And because Notre Dame has a great rush defense, obviously, they're not going to be able to run on them. And look, Mike Bobo's our offensive coordinator. That's entirely possible. But the good thing about following a team closely instead of being a national media person is that we actually get to pay attention enough to hear things out of practice and things that, most of the national media won't pay attention to. And one thing that I've been hearing out of practice is that Gunnar Stockton has been beating this defense deep on a remarkable number of occasions.
Okay.
So you can take from that Gunnar Stockton can throw the ball successfully if he needs to. What I take from that is that they are practicing Stockton beating the defense deep.
The entire offense.
Yeah, which tells me they're not just sitting on their hands running 3 yards in a cloud of dust trying to win this game that way. That tells me they're going to be leaning on Gunnar Stockton's ability to throw the football. And that's just fine with me because I'm not going to go as far as to make the case that Gunnar is better than Carson Beck. I agree with John that I think this team will be better with him in the backfield. The team will be better. I talked about this after the Georgia Tech game, that Georgia has been winning games with those Georgia DNA traits, the toughness, the composure, the resilience, the connection. And I would argue, with no disrespect to Carson Beck, by the way, I would argue that Gunnar Stockton's got a little bit more of that in him.
Yeah.
You can make the argument when it comes to composure. Gunnar did get a little rattled and throw that really bad interception against Texas.
But then he came back to lead a scoring drive.
Exactly. You gotta be pretty tough too. By the way,
that's kind of Stetson Bennett-esque.
Yeah. Oh, it's coming because you've got to have a lot of toughness to, when we're talking about toughness as one of those traits, come out on a crucial 3rd down in overtime and let someone take your head off to get a 1st down. And multiple times in that game, he was running hard. He was throwing his shoulder into somebody and talking trash afterwards, like
taking out guys in allegedly the number 1 defense in the country.
Yeah. Gunnar, again, you said it, Mike. He's just got some of that Stetson Bennett toughness and swagger in him.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to resiliency, I'd say it's a push between the two. Carson was pretty resilient, but the way Gunnar got in there with likely very limited preparation, no idea he was going to be in our biggest game of the season to that point.
And he didn't play at all. Like, even when Carson's throwing 3 picks against like Texas and Alabama, he didn't come in those situations. Like, there was no reason for him to think he was going to come in unless you had a severe injury, right?
Yeah, nobody's ever accused Kirby of having commitment issues. He overcommits.
That's exactly right. But he comes in there having to win this game down at the half after not having any plan of coming. I mean, I'm sure they had a plan, but he wasn't expecting to come into this game at all. And then you want to talk about connection. It's been mentioned already. Kirby Smart himself said that he elevates the team around him, that they play better for him. The unspoken part of that is that they play better for him than they did for Beck. You see the way the leaders of this team have surrounded him on and off the field. They put out that little mini movie about the SEC championship game. The way these guys were talking to Gunner, lifting him up, they just had something. They clicked. And based on what I've seen there, that may be the reason that no passes were dropped in the second half, like we keep talking about. And look, the way this season has gone, I've said it before, even being in this position is incredible for this Georgia team. Georgia won the SEC championship. They are champions no matter what happens in the playoff. And after the year that they had and the schedule that they did, if this Sugar Bowl is the last game of the season for us, then I will stand here in the post-game show and talk about how proud I am of this team for making it to this point. Because after that Ole Miss game, I don't think any of us thought that they would.
No.
No. But I don't think it's going to be the last game of the season. Dogs get the win and maybe start preparing for another blowout in Miami? Question mark?
I mean, we saw what happened the last time Georgia played a Big Ten team in the Orange Bowl. Just gonna throw
This
that out
Orange
there.
Bowls to get all together. We win it by 20 points each, right? At least.
At least there was a 60 I remember being on the board.
But hey, whoa. Guys, let's remember, they keep trying to convince us Penn State is good and better than Michigan allegedly was.
That's what they're saying.
Got some beachfront property in Arizona, if you believe that.
All right. I'm just gonna throw some questions out here for you guys because y'all hit on
Do you
a lot
want
of
answers? Because I am on my third glass of whiskey.
Yes.
So
Oh, yes.
They're mostly rhetorical, but you will get answers, Dad.
Yeah. I'll throw them out there if y'all want to, shout an answer. That works too. Do y'all remember the last time Georgia quarterback made his first career start against Notre Dame?
Oh my goodness! I believe the man's last. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was personally activated for a hurricane with the Georgia National Guard and watched that game sober as hell in a Buffalo Wild Wings and in Noonan, Georgia.
Ooh,
and someone paid for our meal because we were in uniform. Joke's on them. We weren't allowed to change because at any minute we were going to get a phone call to load a bus to go help the places that got hit by the hurricane, which, joke's on us, none of Georgia got actually hit by that hurricane. So I just sat around in a warehouse for 3 days.
Nice.
But that season ended up going pretty well that I can remember. I mean, not
for the most part.
Yeah, not except for one play.
Until a game in Atlanta.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about that, guys.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter because UCF won the national championship that year anyway, so it does not matter. So I watched some expedited highlights of Notre Dame before we got on here, and we kind of talked about it before we got on and talked a little bit about it with Tim. I'm not really super impressed with what Riley Leonard. He throws ducks like he's the love child of Tim Tebow and Peyton Manning, like old Peyton Manning. He does have some nice touch every now and then, but like he's not like y'all mentioned, he's not overly impressive by any means. Sorry. Never mind. San Francisco scored, but it doesn't matter anyway.
Oh, I'm behind. Now they scored. I get it.
Football's fucking stupid.
The NFL is stupid.
Yeah. Anyway, but more than 3 weeks off is what this team really needed. I think that was besides just winning the SEC championship, that was the biggest prize of it all. For a team that's had injury issues literally everywhere, they really, really needed this time off. All of the running backs are going to be available because we're not sure about Freight Train or Branson or anyone like that. Hopefully they're able to play, but if not, ETN and Nate and Cash Jones.
Who?
Cash Jones.
Oh, okay.
They'll all be ready to go, hopefully feeling the best they have since right before they play Clemson. So we have that 3 weeks for Gunner to get prepared, get acclimated, get used to him used to everybody, just tailoring this offense for his strengths. So that's all good. And just some other questions. How many SEC titles does Notre Dame have?
Oh, that's
Conference
tough.
titles in general.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I think they won the Commander-in-Chief's trophy this year. So there's that.
What branch of the military is Notre Dame? That's not on my sheet. but
Catholics. You remember the Crusades? They needed that branch.
very effective time.
Crusades joke was much better than my chaplain joke I was about to make.
But yeah, the answer to that is 0. Notre Dame has no SEC titles, and Georgia has what, 10 now? 3 under Kirby. That's all I care about right now.
Yeah, that's all that matters right
16, I actually think.
Oh, that's right. They're
Ooh.
second most. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. That's right. But yeah,
Let's
Notre
fix
Dame
that,
doesn't
by
have,
the way.
yeah, Notre Dame doesn't have any, so check next to Georgia's name there. I know Marcus Freeman is not Brian Kelly, and that's who. If you want to go back in history, which it doesn't matter because these teams are totally different, and the rosters have turned over completely. But the 2 games that Georgia played against Notre Dame in 17 and 19 were very close, 1-possession games.
Mhm.
Those are Brian Kelly teams, and as we know, Brian Kelly teams 95% of the time shit the bed. But that's not Marcus Freeman. He'll lose against NIU.
Yeah.
But
Or
they'll
Marshall.
play really in Marshall. Yeah. They'll play. They should have lost that game too. Good Lord. But they get up for these bigger games. They held it close to Ohio State, but did they win those games?
Wait, did 10 guys stop Ohio State on the 2-yard line?
Let me look. No, they did not.
Okay, they lost that game. Yeah, they lost that one.
They got a tough team. Can't forget that. Anyway, but Marcus Freeman will have them prepared, but again, talent level, not super sold on it. Another question here: How many bowl games has Kirby Smart led team? How many games has Kirby Smart lost? That's what I'm trying to say.
Are we including national championship games?
No.
1.
Yeah. And this is a bowl game, correct?
I think so. It's hard to tell with the new playoff, but I think so.
Yeah.
And go throw them back.
Oh no, they did lose it. They did lose one. They lost the Sugar Bowl before. Shit.
Yeah, I was about to say, but are we convinced Texas is back?
Of course not.
Okay.
Despite what Sam Ehlinger said, but
regardless.
and you got to keep in mind too, we lost that Sugar Bowl. I'm not one for making excuses. This is entirely on the team, so I don't feel like it's an excuse for the loss. Their curfew the night before was 8 a.m. Like, they did not give a single solitary crap about that game when we lost to Texas.
And when you let all of your opt-outs travel to New Orleans, and that game's really on the defense, because how many records did George Pickens break that day to lose?
Bowl game George Pickens is 99 overall. But that was a culture builder, though. I mean, they haven't looked back since then. Just looking at you, Florida State. Anyway, and Miami maybe. But with all that said, I do think the Dogs win by at least 2 touchdowns. I think that with all the different storylines that you have with Gunnar Stockton coming in, the 2 losses that were tough to deal with that they've had, they could have easily had 3 or 4 losses, but they were able to persevere through that. And get to where they're SEC champions and in this position, and just the overall craziness of this 2024 season, it's fitting that this team is in this position right now.
Yeah.
I do think, again, I may be drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit too much, but I do think they're a team of destiny.
Ooh.
It feels like it, man. It really does. Put a lot of money on Georgia futures last couple weeks.
So are you telling me that Gunnar Stockton's child is going to become Beyonce? That was a Destiny's Child joke that just did not land.
They haven't been together for so long. I thought I don't know. I thought you were talking about the halftime show.
I thought this was just a poor, murdering joke.
What?
I don't know.
Whoa! If you guys are not deep in the Jay-Z Beyonce kill people conspiracy,
Illuminati, yes, absolutely. So
Okay.
Jay was up there with Diddy for the longest time. They were, yeah, all that.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
will be an off-season episode. That
Are they the Clintons of pop culture? Let's not get into that actually.
Okay. One, the boy band guy that died in like Argentina, right?
Yeah.
He's the first person to not thank Beyonce in like 10 years in his award-winning ceremony. 2 weeks later, he's in Argentina at a hotel room. Beyonce checks in that morning. He suddenly jumps off his balcony that night. Not saying she did it,
Just say it.
but I'm not
That's a-
saying she didn't.
that's a coincidence. That's wild.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just
But,
like all the Clinton coincidences.
Just like OJ being at that. Well,
Yep. Thank you, Beyonce, for allowing me to have this podcast. I love you, and I couldn't do anything without you.
I do not
Beyonce
have
is
any
love.
information also that could lead to the arrest or conviction of Hillary Clinton.
I do.
Oh, man,
knowing ya.
you're
Nice knowing
you're flying tomorrow.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
Boy.
tomorrow.
Wink. All right.
Wink, wink. But anyway, yeah. Anyway, I do have Georgia winning by 2 touchdowns. I'm feeling like this is a classic Notre Dame in a big game situation, shitting the bed. Hopefully.
Makes sense.
Like Tim said, it's been since '93 since they won a major bowl game. You can think of it 2 ways: either the trend continues, or they're due for one. I don't think they're due for one.
No.
Not with this offense they have.
Hey, they had one against Indiana. We'll call that a bowl game. It was a postseason game.
Huge.
They were
game.
due for that.
They were due. Now it's time to go back to the trend.
Yeah, time to pay the piper again.
All right, guys. As always, follow us on social media. You know all the links. Rate and review the show 5 stars. I am extremely disappointed. I posted on our Instagram trying to get people to call in for us to do Calling the Dogs today. Didn't get one. So if you're listening to this, and regardless of how the games go, Wednesday, if we don't have at least one voicemail by the time we record again, which we still don't know when.
I'm going to shave a chihuahua.
And then toss it in a river.
Yeah. You'll know that you did this.
It's all your fault. But that's going to do it for this episode. Really enjoyed talking with Tim as always. But remember, guys, there's nothing finer in the land
than a drunk, obnoxious Georgia fan.
Georgia fan.